Hi team, Brian King again. Today's lesson is in response to a teacher who emailed me requesting guidance on how to redirect a student who is using inappropriate language in school. And just so you know, to give you a fair warning, my response to this teacher required me to dispense with my usual diplomatic style. In fact, I was very, very blunt with this teacher. So be prepared for that. The reason I was more blunt than usual because under the circumstances, I thought it was absolutely necessary and long overdue to address the issue in this email. And as I go on with the lesson, you'll get a little more background to understand why. And the reason I was so blunt is because this email revealed to me a problem that I think is rampant in our education system and a problem that needs to stop and stop now. It's the mindset that the end goal of our children is to act appropriately. Appropriate is a subjective, self-serving term that is typically used by adults to get children to act the way the adults want them to, regardless of what the child's needs are. Now, of course, I know there are exceptions to this. There are some wonderful teachers out there, and I have encountered them, but those teachers are the exception. What is more typical is the push for the kids to be appropriate, regardless of their needs. So let me describe the conversation I had with this educator that just happened only yesterday. And I was blunt with her because she repeatedly did something that upset the spectrum child she was working with and then blamed the child for getting upset. Her initial email request stated this: I need strategies to help him use more appropriate language instead of saying school sucks. We need to help him have a more positive attitude towards school. This, in her mind, was the problem, the use of his language, and the solution was to help him have a more positive attitude. And she wanted me to tell her what to do in an email. But I knew she needed a serious shift in her thinking, not just a simple do this and fix the child strategy that she was asking for. Thank goodness she did call at the end of the school day, and here's the dialogue we had. She said, so you wanted to share some of your strategies for redirecting him towards more appropriate language. I asked her first if she wouldn't mind sharing me her strategy for redirecting his language when he said school sucks. She replied, I tell him he needs to use a more appropriate word. Well, I asked her how he responded to her redirection. She said he kept saying sucks over and over again. I asked her why she believed he was doing that. She said, I think he was trying to get a rise out of me. Now this is where I started getting blunt. I was extremely direct with the teacher for several reasons. The child in question is depressed, doesn't like going to school, thinks the teachers are upset with him all the time, is overwhelmed in the classroom, and he can barely concentrate enough to get the work done, and then the feedback he receives further frustrates him. Feedback like, hurry up, come on, there's not much time, you need to stay focused. Lastly, this child happens to be my 8-year-old autistic son. When he sat up crying a few nights ago and told me how bad school was for him, I didn't tell him that I would try to help. I didn't say I'll see what I can do to make it better. I didn't say I'll try and change things. I said things will change, and I won't back down until they do change. So when I learned that this was how he was being spoken to, after I spent the entire previous school year coaching his then primary teacher on how to effectively work with him, and then to see that those strategies were not carried over, I was ticked. The previous year, he started the school year with a teacher that yelled a lot, was very reactive, inconsistent, and he'd come home crying, so overwhelmed, so confused, not wanting to return to school. He couldn't read then, and he didn't want to. He had difficulty writing. The mere suggestion that he would do his nightly reading or writing would result in a meltdown. He'd literally curl up in the corner and shut down. A few meetings with the previous teacher in which I explained how and why she was going to apply the strategies I taught her and working with my son had the following results. By the end of the school year, he was enthusiastically reading. He was writing his own stories and continues to do so. He now offers to read his 5-year-old brother bedtime stories. So he went from traumatized by the idea of reading and writing to now being excited about it. And the support that he received based on the strategies I taught the teacher took only a few months to make this shift, not years. So this year, he has a new staff working with him who are doing the same junk that I spent the last year correcting. So his sadness made perfect sense to me. So I knew I had to be very direct with this teacher and fix it now before all of his progress he made last year slides backwards. So I said the first thing you need to do is remove the word appropriate from your vocabulary permanently. It is a subjective term that he can't measure. You need to start thinking in terms of cause and effect, because that's how he thinks. He's a concrete thinker. You need to replace the word appropriate with the word effective. He needs to feel that he is effective. Effective at learning, effective at communicating, effective at getting his needs met, etc. I told her that when you ask him why he's sad and he says school sucks, and then you criticize the word he used, then you blew it. The only thing you taught him he was effective at being was inappropriate. He came to you looking for support, and he allowed himself to be vulnerable when he usually shuts down and says nothing. I encouraged him to speak up because the teacher said they want to help if he'd only tell them what was upsetting him. So he did what I encouraged him to do, and you blew it. You blew it because you used those outdated, short-sighted behavioral approaches schools use that act as though the way a child expresses his feelings matters more than the feelings themselves. I told her that when you asked him why he was sad and he said school sucks, what you did was to make the word sucks more important than his feelings. I asked her what feeling that she thought he was expressing when he used the word sucks. She said, I think he was trying to get a rise out of me. I said, don't read his mind or assume his motive. What feeling was he expressing when he used the word sucks? She said, anger. So I then shared with her the following strategy. When he said that school sucks, your only response to that statement is to ask, you sound angry. Are you angry? The key here is not to assume anger, but to clarify if your perception that he's angry is correct. When he says, yeah, I'm angry, your response is, oh, thank you. I understand angry better than the other word you used. Thank you so much for clarifying. Can you tell me more about the things you're angry about so that we can work together to make them better? When you use your approach of criticizing his choice of words, and he kept saying sucks over and over again, he wasn't trying to get a rise out of you. When you criticized his word, you criticized his feelings. Feelings that were honest and valid. He kept saying the word sucks to show you that he wasn't going to allow you to minimize his feelings. So he wasn't trying to get a rise out of you. He was pointing out to you that you were missing the point. The point that his feelings are what you missed because you were fixated on the word. Your only responsibility to my son, or any other spectrum child, is to support him in finding a way to communicate his needs in a way that works for both of you. And you don't need to be yet one more person telling him he's doing something wrong in order to accomplish that. When you use the approach I just explained, his use of the word sucks, or even harsher language for some kids, isn't criticized, scolded, or punished. In fact, it's barely acknowledged. And therefore his feelings aren't ignored, and the word he chose that you don't like isn't reinforced because you didn't react to it. Instead, his feelings are clarified, and a word, in this case the word anger, is identified that he also uses and is one you point out helps you to understand what he needs better and are then better able to give him the support he wants from you. As parents and educators, we really need to hold ourselves to a higher standard when it comes to our communication. Words matter. Words can hurt or words can help. That is why I teach communication skills to the parents and teachers I work with as clients. Because frankly, the way we talk to our kids sucks. And we need to stop blaming them for pushing back and go out of our way to learn and apply the best possible skill set available. It isn't in a book, and it isn't at a seminar. You learn it through direct instruction in how it's done until you are as effective as possible. If you choose not to get the instruction and apply it, then things will never change. You will always argue with your kids, they will always fight with you, and they'll always push back. My conversation with this teacher ended by her saying, "You just reminded me of a workshop I took over the summer that explained some similar things that you just did. I'm going to have to try that." I said, "Of course. What good is a strategy you learn but never apply?" Knowledge isn't power, folks. Knowledge you apply to solve problems is power. It's all in the application. Because in the end, the two forces that have the greatest power to shape our lives and the lives of our children are the decisions we make and the actions we take. So what decisions will you make about how to communicate with your child? And what education you will get for yourself? What action will you take to get that education so the tools you need are the ones you actually have? The decision is yours. Until then, I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for being you.